Hi there, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's APMG webinar, Create the Future of Work. My name's Mark Constable, I'll be your host and moderator, and it's a pleasure to be joined by regular guest presenter Melanie Franklin. Many of you will be familiar with Melanie, having attended previous webinars, but for the benefit of those unfamiliar, Melanie is an experienced practitioner, author, trainer and consultant in all things Agile project, program and change management. Melanie runs her own training and consultancy business, Agile Change Management Limited, and also heads up the growing continuous change community on LinkedIn. So today's session is all about the changing world of work, change that has been at least accelerated and in many cases forced by the pandemic. And the scale of such change presents big challenges for individuals, teams and organisations as they adapt to new ways of working. For many, it's a fundamental shift compared to pre-pandemic norms. And what Melanie plans today is a masterclass for scoping and planning such change using some key techniques. Before I hand over to Melanie, bear with me a few more moments while I quickly cover logistics for the session. So the first point to note is we are recording the session, and everyone that's registered will receive a follow-up email in due course once the recording and slides are available online. Secondly, you're welcome to submit questions at any stage. So you should notice a questions function on your GoToWebinar control panel. So feel free to fire those questions in. I'll be keeping an eye on them throughout, and we'll address as many as we can with a bit of Q&A towards the end. And last but not least, we welcome any feedback. So positive or negative, that always helps us with planning and delivering webinars in the future. So that's gratefully received. Okay, I think we're set. So without further ado, welcome Melanie. Great to have you with us as ever, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Right, okay, let's have a little bit of fun here. Why did I want to do this particular webinar? It's because this is probably one of the biggest talking points around. We're all involved in defining the future of work. There's an awful lot of articles out there in the press and in various publications and research houses about what hybrid work is. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in this who've always all got their sort of fingers in the pie, from our own organisations, but also real estate agents, councils who are looking at taxes, transportation firms who are looking at how they get us to the office, or if we don't go back, what's going to happen. So I thought what we'd have a look at in this sort of masterclass is that I'm going to get you thinking and working as well as me. And what I'm giving you is a sort of a quick summary of a bigger sort of workshop that I deliver for a variety of clients who are all in the same boat. We know that we're all debating this subject. We all want to maximize benefits, and we are having to think about this because it's a once in a lifetime event. This pandemic has brought forward a huge amount of technology changes. It's forced us all to work from home, and it's forced us all to consider really, where do we want to work? How do we want to work? Who do we want to be working with? And it's not just the sort of the video calls that are making this possible. You know, I work with organisations who around the world have been able to undertake factory inspections, have been able to get local teams to implement equipment which they'd normally fly in, engineering teams from around the world to actually do. They're doing it all by digital, video, robotics. They're actually sort of carrying out a huge amount of work that would normally be on site. Will they go back to actually doing that on site? Well, some of them will, but there's a lot that will actually say, do you know what, we're doing this just fine where we are. We don't have to have the expense and the time to assemble a team of engineers from different countries all to fly to a particular plant or to a mine or to whatever business they're running. So this is a sort of a longer term piece. So definitely challenges about where we're going to work and who we do that work with. I thought it's quite interesting that McKinsey put out some research very recently that said 47% of staff feel that there is a lack of clear vision about work in the post-pandemic world, and that is causing them real concern. And I think that's very true. The uncertainty principle comes into play here, doesn't it? If we don't know what's going to happen to us, we sort of hang back and think, well, I don't want to put my foot forward because I don't know what's going to be really happening. As you can see from this mind map, and this was just one that I was sort of wandering through, we need to decide what hybrid working means for our organisation. And the big thing that you notice when you do this is that it's still work. So where we work and who is in our workspace may be different, but the factors are key to sort of any organisational design initiative. They're all things we need to consider. But even though we could argue that hybrid working only affects when, where and with whom we work, I think that one of the themes that's come out is that a recognition that our work location has a fundamental impact on our quality of life. It goes to the heart of our desire for a work-life balance. But there's also a feeling of being part of a community and the value of social connections. Again, quoting recent surveys, the global estate agency Knight Frank have done a big survey, and they found that the virus has emphasized the importance of offices as collaborative spaces that support our well-being. These aren't, they shouldn't be just environments that maximize productivity. Another theme that's come out from an awful lot of CEOs is the recognition that perhaps the office, the location, is the way in which we promote corporate culture, not just promote it perhaps, but create corporate culture. Some organizations are now thinking, right, okay, collaborative spaces where people can genuinely join together and have conversations. There need to be space for this. I was reading in the Harvard Business Review about the new Olympics headquarters in Switzerland, and it's the reason it caught my eye is it's a very similar experience that I have to the UN headquarters in Denmark, in that everything's around a central staircase, and there are places where you can sit off, you know, in the routes towards the central staircase, and you can have little conversations. You can collaborate with people. You can say hi. You can spend a few moments. And in the UN, there's also the extension of that into the cafeteria, where you get to meet lots of people. You say hi. And it really does sort of hit home that collaborative space is where we innovate, where we share ideas, where we introduce people with common needs or common experiences. Oh, have you met Rita? She's also dealing with this issue. Oh, talk to Mark. He's got some really good ideas on this subject. You know, I think the other thing that I've noticed when discussing the hybrid working is a realization that I don't want to be just talking about this in terms of the organization that I'm working with. It goes much further than that, because it's not just the connections, that humanity with our colleagues that perhaps we've noticed we're missing. But I'm also missing other communities, other memberships. I didn't realize that I was a member until it's taken away from me, that I was a member of a community at a Woking train station, which I used to get the 6:37 into town. I used to go to a place to have breakfast every morning, and I used to know the staff there, and I miss those people. I didn't know the people I got on the train with, but I saw the same faces every single day. And we used to help each other find seats and store our luggage and do all sorts of things. And I miss the professional networks. We're on this call because we want to actually socialize with each other. And the reason I've changed the way that I deliver these webinars is I'm going to park the questions over to you in a minute, because I want you to have a chance to hear from each other. And it's a little bit of networking. This might not be the greatest platform for it, but wherever we can get some networking in, let's do it. I miss those opportunities, those connections. So first and foremost, if you're going to be leading this initiative in your organization, or if you're going to be a part of it, have a think about maybe what hybrid working actually means. The second thing is that maybe we need to consider this from all of our different stakeholders. I mentioned in the introduction, transportation firms. What are the train companies going to be doing? What are the bus companies going to be doing? What about transportation in our offices? What about cycle policies? Those sorts of things. What about childcare? And if you're going to be changing your working hours or where you work, what kind of childcare do you need? Are those provisions available locally? What about the cafes? What about the little places where you go to get lunch or get coffee on the way into work? What about the bars where you might have gone to socialise after work? They're not within our control, these stakeholders, but they are a wider society that we are a part of. So I've definitely, although I've put up a simple community map here, I've definitely been asking these wider questions. And of course, you can find them very easily by simply asking, who are our stakeholders? And you can sort of trail back through to find all of those. But the key thing for me is that we don't have all the answers. So let's start from where we really are, which is we have some ideas of what we think hybrid working might look like. We've got to have an end goal, because we've got to have something we're heading towards. That end goal is perhaps the compelling vision, the compelling destination, it's the encapsulation of all the sort of advantages and improvements. And it's got to be compelling, because people have got to want to get on board with this change. And we've got to try and work out what on earth is this actual end goal, you know. But one thing I absolutely know is that whatever I think hybrid working is today, that's going to change over time. To show my commitment to this, to some of my clients, 6 weeks ago, I started back in an office to around 2 days a week. It's very flexible. I can do as many as I like, as few as I like. I'm working from home today. Tomorrow I'll be up early and I'll be in the office by 7:45, because I'm learning the traffic and trying to work out what the best routes are. And what I've realized is that every day, I did actually write a blog about this on LinkedIn, so do have a look if you want to, but I wrote it a weekly blog because I just tried to capture what my experiences were and what lessons I'd learned from each of the weeks. And it was fascinating that my understanding of what this kind of working pattern might be was very different to what I'd anticipated it would be. There are advantages, there are disadvantages. And also, of course, as I try to understand it, I understand I've got different needs and I hadn't planned things. So this end goal, absolutely, we can take some steps forward towards changing our working patterns and our culture, the first wave of changes, but we need to recognize that then that end goal will change shape a little bit, and we might need to change direction a little bit to keep up with it. And then, of course, again, there might be a third, fourth, or fifth wave. And the thing that underpins this is the horizon scanning. It's about being willing to be flexible. It's about willing to ask loads of questions about, hang on, what's happening? What's available from a technology point of view? What's available from a transportation point of view? What has been the experience of people so far? What are people liking? What are they disliking? What are our customers thinking is good? What do our customers want? There's loads of different angles to this. And the only thing I know for sure is that I can't predict it. And I'm going to have to keep asking questions to try to work out what the next step should be. And again, this brings me to a classic. It doesn't matter that the subject is hybrid working. And what I'm about to say applies to nearly every transformation that I've ever worked on, is that ironically, we tend to start at the wrong end of things. And so we know that there's tangible changes. And so what we try to do is work out the infrastructure, the technology, and the new habits and norms, and how we're going to try and behave. But we tend to go straight for this idea of, well, actually, we've got to put screens up in the office, or we're going to have more space between the desks, or we're going to have more collaborative spaces, so we need more couches, or we need more coffee machines. We start to think of those tangible things. then we work backwards and think, oh, maybe we ought to enshrine that in some kind of standard or policy, or maybe there are measures we ought to be taking. There are so many different policies at the moment. I mean, I'm working with HR teams who are looking at things like there are reward policies that if you change what the office means to you, you change perhaps what people are looking for. So there was a survey in the Financial Times recently. Things like what's becoming less popular is travel vouchers, or having a sort of stay here perks, as they called them, like the ping pong tables, or the on-site sort of dry cleaning or creches or massages or gym memberships, all those things that were sort of, you know, like keep you in the office. And what's becoming far more attractive is perhaps debt support, advice on personal finance, advice on mental health and well-being, expanded healthcare benefits, wellness apps, all those sorts of things becoming slightly different. So we tend to think about the physical space, then we start to think about the policies, and then finally we get to the desired culture. What I want to do is, because the most successful transformations I've ever worked on, we start the other way around. And I want to give you the technique for doing this, and I want to get you thinking about maybe what this should be, because I think this is fundamental to defining our end goal. We've got to understand what the culture is. So let's have a look here. Right? These are all things that I've thought of just by pulling together this workshop for clients, but also preparing for this webinar. So pre-pandemic, what were my assumptions, and what how might they be reshaped? What would be the best kind of value or assumption or belief? What would serve us well in the future in this post-pandemic world? So for example, I think there was always that assumption that working from the office was the norm. Well, maybe working from anywhere. There was something a few months ago, it was about being terribly trendy. You shouldn't be saying work from home. You should be doing work from anywhere, WFA, because it encapsulated that some people might want to work from their home, but they also might want to work from a local hub, hot desking somewhere, or they might want to work in a coffee shop. Somebody I know used to call it the coffee office. I don't think that ever caught on, but I get where she was coming from. So maybe the norm, the accepted norm. Now, when I'm talking about these accepted norms, this just illustrates my point from the earlier slide, is that accepted norm, hey, working from anywhere, hang on, we need to put that into some kind of standard or policy, because it's going to govern perhaps our hiring policies. It's going to be part of our employment contract. So you see here, don't you, as we move through the desired culture, this should maybe start us thinking about, yeah, but how would we make that the norm? What would that actually involve? Who would be responsible for that? How would we measure it? These are all really good questions. And this is why, if you're going to do transformation brilliantly, you start on the left of this diagram, not the right. Because whatever you do on the right usually costs money. It's tangible, right? We buy stuff, we implement stuff, we put stuff in place, which is, by the way, once you've done it, very hard to get rid of, and it costs a lot of money. So you then find, because you've spent all that money, that you almost like reverse engineer and have to sort of bend over backwards to fit in to your sort of the way you do stuff, whatever it is you've built or created. And then finally you get to thinking about, well, how might this actually work in practice? So stupid if we do it the wrong way around. So as you can see, work from home, work from anywhere. I need to be seen to do my work. So this whole culture of presenteeism. I've been reading some case studies from Japan, particularly springs to mind Fujitsu, who employ 80,000 in Japan. I've always found working in Tokyo, the culture of presenteeism was really, really strong, that you had to be seen to be hardworking and at your desk all of the time. And this has been a major, major shake-up for those kinds of organizations, when actually we're having to make this big shift, being trusted to do work from wherever we happen to be based, you know, because it's actually, do you trust me to do my work? Not, hey, I'm still there, you know. You can see that I've left my bag on the floor. I'm obviously in that seat. I might have gone somewhere else, but I'm still around. There's it's Mental Health Week this week, so I was reflecting on this. People will know I'm struggling. Well, you would know I was struggling. If you saw me in the office, you would know. I mean, this week, for all sorts of reasons, and I will say that 3 colleagues have, 2 have had close relatives who've died this week, and 1 whose partner is in hospital, seriously ill. So I would say that this week has been a particularly trying week. You would know that I was struggling. You would know that I felt under pressure and that I felt sad as well. You could read it from my body language. But if I'm working from anywhere, maybe I need to tell people that I need help, and that I'm not at my most creative best this week, and that I'm feeling a bit shaky because bad news just keeps coming. I need to be more explicit about that. That's gonna change things, I think. This is something I've learned from my hybrid working. Where and when I work is fixed. So I plan what work I need to do. That's how it always used to be. I knew where I was going, I knew where my desk was, and I used to plan the work I was going to get on with. Now I need something else. I plan where I work, when I work, and what work I need to do. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday evening, and it's only when I called it out explicitly that she realised what I meant. Because she's the kind of person who writes a sort of to-do list, her plan on a Sunday night. She organises her thoughts about her work. And I said, yeah, I get that. I said, but actually what I found in this hybrid world is that I need to do a little bit more thinking, because I need to consider, right, I need to write this paper this week. Where would I best do that? Probably I need to be uninterrupted at home. Or the flip side, oh, good grief, it's chaos here. There are the people who look after my dad. There's somebody's coming in to fix the electrics, and the dog's going to bark forever. Oh, I really need to concentrate. I'm going to go and book some space in the office. But the key thing is I need to think through where would I best get that work done. And then I sometimes need to think, who do I need to be working with? What days do they work in the office? Maybe I could go in and be with them. So there's a lot more, I think, to consider. That's certainly been my learning point. Not just that, but I also then have to pack things and think, well, I'm going to the office, I'll need that. Oh, but I need to bring that back from the office because I need that at home. Oh, these are the little things about moving to this hybrid working that I will be honest, is driving me insane. My network just used to grow. My behavior before was that I would go to evening events, perhaps. I'd meet people in the cafeteria. Certain of my clients, the cafeteria is the big thing, and I used to, there was one organization where I used to sort of stay for about 3 breakfasts. It was heaven. I'd have a cup of tea and a piece of toast with one group, and then a cup of tea and a piece of toast with another group. And then I at lunchtime I'd meet lots of people, and it was all about the networking and connections, and I didn't really think much about it. But now I need to seek out new people, new experiences. This year alone I have said yes to 2 very different pieces of work that I wouldn't normally have done, working for organizations I wouldn't normally work with. Partly because I wanted new experiences and I wanted to work with new people, not in industries I normally work with. I just wanted to sort of expand my horizons, because otherwise I'm meeting the same old people, and there's not much inspiration in that. But again, it's being more deliberate about it. And of course, before, I think there was this thing about working arrangements were static. They were just there. Whereas now they're evolving, and we need to respond to changes in our environment. Now, you might not agree with any of these points, but what I think would be really helpful is you do the same thing that I did, because it puts you in the game when it comes to having an opinion about this transformation. Think about, what were your old norms? What pre-pandemic, how did you used to behave? What were your assumptions, if you like? And think about what you think the future might look like. I'm going to ask Mark to collect. So we're going to have a few minutes of thinking time while you do that. And we're going to collect them in the chat function, because Mark is going to have to work really hard. He's going to be reading the chat while you put in there, I used to think this and now I'm going to think this. So I did the pairs, like work from the office is norm, work from anywhere is the norm. I need to be seen to be doing my work. I'm trusted to do my work. So I was just bouncing ideas about the reality of, whatever it might be for you, or for your organization more widely. Like, do you have customers? We always go out on sales visits, or we always, is face to face. Or a colleague of mine is being very more deliberate now with his lunch policy. He always used to take clients out for lunch, and I heard him talking to somebody the other day, and he's sort of saying, actually doing a lot more of the, that's coming much later now, doing a lot more of the relationship building online. I'm saving up all those kinds of visits, so I can concatenate them into sort of 1 or 2 days, where I do all that sort of networking. I'm a lot less thoughtless about how I use my time. I thought that was quite interesting. So, because we were playing this game together, and you sort of said, I wouldn't have put myself as thoughtless use of time, but more informal planning, maybe, he said, and now more formal consideration of what am I going to get out of this if I go and meet somebody? Because going to meet somebody means masks, it means washing my hands, it means covering myself from head to toe in antibacterial stuff. And that's his choice, obviously, but things are different, and I think it's just trying to work out what those differences are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I've done on previous webinars, which is I'm going to collect in your thoughts. So I'm going to turn to Mark in just a moment. He's going to read stuff out. Is there anything coming in the chat to begin with, Mark, or is this a...
There is, yeah. We've got.
Oh, that's all right. That's good.
stuff.
Otherwise, I might have nothing to write up. So old and new assumptions is what I'm going to capture. So old world, and I'll just do a quick one here. And then this way, when I send the slides out to Mark, who's going to make it all available to you, I've written you a paper, by the way, guys, just trying to sum all this up, because we're covering a lot of points, and I thought you'd appreciate it if I wrote it up for you. So, Mark, have we got any pairings of old world, new world?
Yes, yeah, let's go. Right. So used to work in one location for the whole day. Going forward, I could split my day to avoid rush hour peak travel.
Ooh, I love that one. Split my day to avoid rush hour. Ooh, I love that. Yeah, okay, what's the next one?
So pre-pandemic, do all the work at the same desk surrounded by the same people. Post-pandemic, picking the right environment for the task, working with a wider variety of people.
Same people, and now it's see different people, yeah? Yeah, okay, right, love that. What else we got?
This one's specific, but I think it points to those general, interactions that you have day to day when you're in the office. But I used to love stopping for a corridor conversation. Now I might have to proactively drop a hello email.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. Now it's more formal, isn't it? There was something about that now we have to schedule our conversations. So there was that unscheduled moments of connectivity, and now we have to schedule connectivity. It kind of bothers me because scheduled connectivity means that we're less likely to just say the odd comment, have the odd throwaway remark. Yeah, that's a brilliant one. What else we got?
Very straightforward one around time. I used to work 8 till 5.
And what is that person going to do now? 24 hours?
Oh, wait, yeah. Post-pandemic, I can work any time as long as I put in the hours.
Yeah, anytime as long as I do the hour. Actually, I've just been commenting to somebody about this because he sent me an email saying that he was going to be charging for working outside of hours, and he was putting his prices up by £10 an hour. This is a subcontractor I use. And I sort of said, well, that's absolutely fine, but I just want you to know that what you define as inconvenient hours, you're going to be doing some work in the evening, are actually normal to other people. So just be careful, because he was going to be writing this out to all his clients. And I sort of said, be careful, because what you're doing is you're imposing your what's norm to you onto other people, and that isn't the case. I mean, there's a whole thing, isn't there, about whether or not when we send emails, and if somebody sends an email at 8 o'clock in the evening, but I just deal with it by, I will answer emails when I'm at work. I don't feel the pressure to have to answer them immediately, but I'm also sympathetic to the fact that some people are working between 8 and 9 because they've just got the kids down. They're just having an hour of tidying up because they tried to work, but around 3:15, all hell broke loose as kids came back from school. They never got anything finished. So they're just having 8 till 9. They're just tidying up their thoughts in their desk. And I'm not going to say, you should not send me an email at this late in the evening. I'm just going to ignore it, and if I notice it at all, and I'll at 7 o'clock the next morning, which is 2 hours before some of my colleagues start work, I'll have a look at it then. So I think there's something here about the flexibility of this that's going to be very interesting. What else we got?
Common ones around getting some time back, essentially. So pre-pandemic, traveling to work on a train, for example. So a bit of lost time there. Post-pandemic, working virtually, so you're saving time and money.
Yeah, get the time and money from commutes back. Yeah, absolutely. Love that. What else we got?
It's an interesting one. Old ways, I used to have to push through work no matter what my energy levels. New world, I can plan my work according to my energy levels, picking when I'm more creative and when I may need a rest.
Now I work when I am energized and rest when I need to. I love that. That's brilliant. And we've got room for one more. Go on, Mark.
Okay, this is probably comes in nicely to all the things we hear about Zoom fatigue and everything, but pre-pandemic, I didn't have to be so conscious about appearance, facial expressions, etc. in meetings. Post-pandemic, have to expend extra energy in ensuring expressions at all points are appropriate, etc.
Conscious of facial expressions. Yeah, absolutely. And also, as somebody said to me the other day, remembering to get dressed. She said to me the other day, she said, so many days it's happened where I've logged on and realized there's some urgent emails. And she said, the next time I look up, it's nearly lunchtime. She said, I'm still in my pajamas. This is not a good thing. But I think that a lot of people can understand that. I think a lot of us appreciate that that's exactly how it feels.
Yeah, this one's good, Mel. I had lunch at my desk in the old world. New world, I had to eat out and arrange to meet people for lunch.
Lunch at desk. So I'm going to put that at desk. Meet people. Okay, meet people at lunch. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. That's lovely. Okay, right. Okay, so you can see that this is a game for everybody to play. And the crucial thing is, if I put it back in this context for a moment, you know, it is about the fact that let's do this the right way around. Let's have the conversation about that desired culture. Let's try to understand what we think our new norms, our new assumptions should be, because those are the fulcrum around which we can, you know, sort of judge, are we heading towards a compelling, exciting future? Is this something that people want? And from that, we can then develop the standards, the policies, the measures. And that should lead us to perhaps a more deliberate expenditure if we're going to be doing expenditure of things like sorting out the office. I know my brother's organisation sent and I think they did it by management grade, but they sent them all a sort of working from home pack. They sent them out laptops, or they sent them out printers, some of them, and they got various bits and pieces, and it was all very expensive. Now, that was a sort of knee-jerk reaction to the initial sort of lockdown, but I think we need to be doing the next wave of investment perhaps more mindfully, and it will come back to the culture first. The next thing, so we had a little look at this. The next thing I wanted to talk about was if we can get, and obviously there's an awful lot more work to do than I can do in sort of 50 minutes, but if we can get an agreement on maybe what our end goal looks like, what does good look like, then what we need to do is start talking about how we decompose that into sort of key outcomes that we want to achieve. For each of those outcomes, we can then start to get more specific into what those new ways of working are, and then we can work out what those tasks are. And the way that this works is that effectively, you know, it's very much an agile change. This really is an evolving change because we know that we can't predict it, and it's going to be different as the world moves on. So one of the things we're going to do is then look at that end goal and think, well, the highest business value outcome, that goes first. What is it that we need to do? Iteration one is always going to be the same iteration, which is, you know, it's in any sort of agile plan, you're going to be looking at, well, organizing how on earth I'm going to manage this change initiative, how I'm going to manage this transformation. And then all the subsequent iterations are actually delivering on it. And of course, what you've got to do is look at that end goal and pick out a stream of work, basically, a wave of changes. You think, yeah, this outcome here, that would be the most useful thing we could do. Let's do that. And then let's put this into play. Let's make something happen. And then we'll roll on to the next thing that we can make happen. So I wanted to give you an example, and then let's have an opportunity to talk about this and see what you guys think. It's based on those sort of those cultural norms that we've just come up with. It's starting to think about maybe what hybrid working looks like, what should it be, and I'm just going to take you through an example. You might not agree with this example, but I'm just going to give it to you because I've identified, this is from another organisation, but we've been sat down thinking about what we think the outcome should be. And our first one is around culture. And what we're doing is the game we've just played, really, is we are trying to establish what we think those values and those beliefs should be. We want to have inclusive conversations. We want to get people thinking about not just their needs, but we also want to be putting in place things like the horizon scanning that says, hey, this is not a one-off conversation. We want to be coming back to you. We're putting in place a network of sort of champions across the organisation that colleagues can locally go to, and those champions are going to be the ones who are facilitating sort of local conversations about how things are working out, what else is required. So some of those sort of changes, and it's being done from internal colleague perspective, but also from perspectives of, for example, not just customers, but this is a financial services organisation, so we're talking about what do we think anticipated footfall would be in each of our sort of bank branches, and how do we want to be using our call centres, and how do we want to be sort of servicing customers? What are their norms? So we're trying to sort of surface out what those norms are based on far greater digital interfaces in the last year. What should we return to? What shouldn't we? So we're having all of those conversations. The game that we've just played on a bigger scale, but the outcome that we will get to is really, this is the shape of our hybrid working. This is the shape of how we believe we're going to interact, not just with each other as colleagues, but also how we're going to interact with our industry, with our customers, how we put ourselves out there. So actually a much deeper conversation, but that's our plan. The collaboration piece will be the next wave of change after that. The reason is that culture's gone first for this particular organisation, is that the culture sort of is standalone, in that it's something that we can get on with now without having to expend out a lot of money. It's particularly something that we've got a whole year of experience. We can have these conversations now. We don't need to jump straight into spending a lot of money and making sort of decisions that might be difficult to reverse later. But that cultural piece it shows in the marketplace that we're listening and that we're talking to customers, but it also acts as the fulcrum around which we can then do further iterations of work. Because that's the thing, isn't it, with agile change, is that whatever you try to change first, it should act as the jumping off point on which you can build the next change. You are effectively iterating, you are evolving your solution. And in this particular organisation, what we've decided on is collaboration. And now this refers to all the practical aspects of how we operate as teams and networks of colleagues. So it is all of the sort of, at a local level, it's about how do teams work. For example, if there's a team of 18 people, how many people are likely to be in the office? What are individuals' working arrangements going to be? Picking up on what you just said earlier, it's not just which days might they physically be present, or some people who don't want to be present at all. And do we set that as hang on a minute, we actually have to have some minimum when they come back into the office. Otherwise, we lose they lose the cultural piece that we're looking for. So we're having all of those conversations at a local point. What are the working hours? Finding out in individual teams who likes to work in the evening, who likes to work in the morning. But it also means that there's collaboration on a wider scale. Things like the policies we talked about, HR, establishing, I talked about the reward mechanisms, but also new talent acquisition mechanisms, new personal development paths for people, the target operating model, if you like. If we're going to be a collaborative, but also partly more virtual and partly more digital organization, what should our operating model look like? So there's a whole piece in there about that. And then as part of collaboration, we know that we also have to think about the technology. So there's a work stream in there for technology. There's a work stream in there for finance, which is really depressing, because although there's great opportunities for some people to say, I'm relocating to Barbados because I don't need to be working from somewhere, you know, on the south coast of the UK. No, I'm going to Barbados. But finance are coming in and looking at that in terms of taxation of people's salary, and what that actually means. So that's kind of a depressing one. But these are all, we've realised, things that we probably can't push out too late. We have to have the cultural conversations, but we also need to start, you know, therefore putting things down on a sounder footing. So that's iteration 3. And then again, this financial services organisation, iteration 4 is virtual leadership. And actually, I've pulled out this one because I think it applies to a lot of us. We know that not everyone being in the office at the same time has a big impact on leadership, coaching, mentoring, facilitating workshops like this. The actual leadership skills of virtual leadership are, well, it's so much more complicated than it ever was before. We have to sort of somehow learn to cope with not having the human moments. If I'm having a difficult conversation with somebody, when we leave the Zoom call, I don't know how they're actually reacting to that. Have I made them really angry and they are going to comply, but they're only going to comply with my request and they're going to do it through gritted teeth? And there's going to be an air of, I don't care the quality, let's just get this over with. Or have I actually connected with them and they're actually going, actually, she's asked for a hard thing, but actually it's the right thing. I'm actually quite motivated to do it. And they are actually feeling committed to it and putting a lot of energy into it. I don't know, because I can't see the body language. People who are working not next to me are opaque to me. We're trying our best, aren't we, with Zoom calls, but it's fairly opaque. And I think that a lot of conversations I've had over the last 6 to 9 months is a recognition that perhaps our leadership development techniques, just having this conversation just before the webinar about business books. I've read a fantastic business book over the weekend called The Chicken Switch. I highly recommend it. It was absolutely brilliant. It was about resilience and willpower, and it was just really good, and how that affects us in organizations. But I was only thinking, I was talking to this friend and saying, do you know what? Business books that we read, anything that's pre-pandemic now looks, well, it just looks so out of date, because it's not talking about virtual leadership. And how difficult that is and how much slower it is. There's a lot of research out there that's showing that we're having to have far more meetings because we're missing connections between each other. We're having to double check things via a meeting that normally I might have bellowed over to the other side of the office and sort of said, you know, Simon, what's this supposed to be doing? You know, and that would have been a moment in time, wouldn't it, where my colleague Simon would have yelled back, no, it's that, not this one, and I would have fixed it there and then. Now we have to arrange a Zoom call. I was talking with somebody I work really closely with, we get on really brilliantly today, and she emailed me about something that's been confirmed. I thought, oh, I've got loads of questions about that, and I said, oh, can we just jump on a Zoom call? And do you know what, I then had to spend 5 minutes. I had to go into my Outlook calendar, sort out the Zoom call. I sent her that quick email, so then I sent her the invite, waiting, not knowing if she was going to accept it or not, and then she came back, she did accept it as we jumped on the call. But that all took 7 minutes of organising. I notice it particularly because I was just thinking, God, if we were in the same office, I just would have yelled over at her, hey, let's have a chat. And we would have had a great chat. But instead, it all had to be formalised via Zoom. And you think, oh, so we know that this sort of stuff is hard. Now, you might not agree with this. You might have a completely different idea about how you want to achieve this hybrid working, but I wanted to show you this sort of roadmap approach because I think it's the discipline behind it that's important. It's whatever your end goal is, yeah, okay, but the outcome is what kind of capability, what kind of shift are we going to achieve? And then what would be the next shift? And what would be the next shift after this? I mean, for some of my colleagues around the world, the outcome is that we're sort of bundling all the stuff together and saying, hey, we've created a whole new set of policies and expectations and some training and new collaborative tools about working from anywhere. But we're rolling it out country by country because there are certain countries where we're finding that actually their experience of the pandemic is so different to others. So there's all sorts of ways you can slice and dice this. The key thing is you have to work out what those outcomes are. And then, as we know, for each outcome, you'd have to look at what the new ways of working and what the tasks were to achieve those new ways of working. And then we have to align it to sort of the order of play based on, you know, which of these outcomes will create the most benefits, are the most useful, the most relevant at this point. And in this case, this is the one I've got. But obviously, I'm going to ask you now, you know, thinking about what hybrid working means for you. What is your shopping list, if you like? What do you think? My organization has got to get this fixed before it gets anything else. We've got to get this in place first. We've got to build this capability first. This is the outcome I'm looking for. Once we've got that, there are other things we can do. And of course, that's the thing with Agile, is that you can see here that I've laid out this sort of roadmap for the organization I'm working with, and we've had lots of these conversations. But actually, these are just stakes in the ground, because I know that now we're working through iteration 2 on culture and we're having these conversations. Ooh, we're learning so much more. And I know we come towards the end of iteration 2, it's really shaping up what we mean by collaboration. We had some ideas of the different work streams that were going to be in there, but those are definitely tightening up and we're learning a lot more. And when we finally get through to maybe towards iteration 4 and start to talk about our executive education and our management development programs that we've got, and all the suppliers we use for education and what virtual leadership looks like, that will change again as well. So I've put, it's always a reminder to me whenever I'm doing a more agile change, as an evolving solution, that, you know, heads down in iteration 2, I've put subsequent iterations as stakes in the ground, but we will really investigate them as we come close to the moment that we're actually going to try and start working on them. So this is the Agile approach, but it's over to you now. What do you think some of these outcomes should be? So I'm just going to go to this point so I can capture some of your ideas. And again, I'm hoping that there are comments in the chat. Are there?
Waiting for the first one or two, I think.
Yeah. It's harder, this one, isn't it? This is not easy. What do you think you should put in place? What do you want to create first? What will actually get you going? It might be a particular policy. It might be actually an agreement that we need to change all the job descriptions, because actually our job descriptions are completely out of line with what our new responsibilities.
So first view coming through. So our clients need to have tech capability alongside skills and confidence.
Our clients need tech capability. Alongside what?
Skills and confidence. So not sure which industry.
Oh, okay. So that's really interesting. That, you know, that's a very good point. You know what? Basically, there's something in here around maybe the first outcome is about a digital capability. Because if we can't do that, I think that's a really good point that you're putting across there. If you don't build that digital capability first, then you can become more hybrid. But if you don't have that in place, it's very, very difficult, isn't it, to sort of say, well, you can work from anywhere. Well, no, if actually we need at the moment our systems are so clunky that we have to be in the office, then that would hold you back. That's a great one. Thank you. What's the next one?
Office focused on collaboration. So I guess that means moving away from the traditional sort of banks of desk layout, maybe an alternative layout that fosters more collaboration.
Yeah, from sort of maybe the cubicles approach, because and that's what a lot of the real estate companies around the world are now realizing with their tenanted buildings, is that, you know, there was the assumption that, hey, I could get 450 people on this floor, but when we're looking at more collaborative spaces, we're taking away the desks, and you know, it's having a big impact on sort of facilities management, because some of the things that we're looking for is not just the funky furniture that we can all sort of enjoy sitting in, but we need far more PowerPoints, and we need to make sure that, you know, we have little charging tables where people can sort of plug their short charging cables for phones in, and actually get stuff charged up around them. So yeah, changes everything. What else we got?
These two are very similar, so I'll give them together. Flexible schedules that accommodate work-life balance, and the second, revised flexible working policy. So similar.
Yeah. And there's agreements to this and the policy to back it up. Again, it's a great example of from an evolving solution. Put that in place first, and it's like the little acorn from which the big oak tree can grow, because you can then move on to sort of having sort of saying, right, we've made these agreements, we're actually moving away from the assumption we're a 9 to 5 office. And once you've done that, it opens up an awful lot of other things under the banner of hybrid working. What else we got?
Balance people's well-being with business objectives and client needs.
Ooh, with client and client needs and strategic objectives. Yeah. I mean, I think this goes to the heart of it's around the sort of almost the societal impact we want to have. What is it that we want to be as an organization? So there's something in there about let's use this this once in a lifetime event to actually position ourselves as the kind of organization we want to be. So yeah, absolutely love that. What else we got?
I love this one. A policy on virtual meeting etiquette.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't think that after a year that's needed, but some organizations are still struggling, in all honesty, with some of the basics of, do I need to show my background? Do I not? Do we have a standard corporate background? I have experienced quite a lot of CEOs who have been dealt with by their corporate communications department, and so they are always behind their standard corporate background now. Whereas I'm thinking of one particular CEO who spent all of last summer dressed in shorts. It wasn't a particularly good look, but you know, we saw his home, we saw his kids coming in because he'd taken over their playroom, and we got to know him so much better. And now there's a different kind of etiquette, which is he's got the corporate background, and we see a lot less now. So yeah, it's making a difference. Got another one?
Yeah, trusting employees to deliver the outcomes activity they need to in the way they find best.
Now, that's a big one, isn't it? I tell you what, we need to have a very open conversation about trust in this organization before we can go any further on hybrid working. Yeah, that's that getting away from that presenteeism perhaps is going to be something that your organization, because if that's a big cultural piece, then that's going to be your first plank of this jumping off point for hybrid working, isn't it? And that's what we're trying to do with this agile approach, is sort of say, what's the first thing you want to put in place? And it doesn't have to be something that's massive, it doesn't have to be something that takes months to achieve, but it has to be something that you go, actually, now we've achieved that, now we can achieve the next thing. And you see what we're doing here with this agile approach. If I just go back to this for a moment, it's achievement after achievement after achievement. That's the key thing you're looking for with agility, and that's why I love agile change, because what I do is I get something changed, I make something happen, I create some kind of positive outcome, and then whatever that is, that's my jumping off point for doing another positive outcome. But as early as possible, I've made a difference, I have improved something, and there's the motivation for doing it. Any more you want to put on this list, Mark, or as we're coming towards the end of the webinar? It's flown by, as usual.
One more that I quite like, micro communities of practice where colleagues can informally share knowledge.
Yeah, I think that goes back to we're missing our networking, aren't we? And I think that's really good. In one big global organization I work with, we've had this conversation, and off the back of it, which I find inspiring, we've had people who've actually said, right, I'm setting up, so some people have gone off and set up sort of almost like book groups, book review groups. They've set up, there's a pizza making group in one country where, because there was an event we did and they all loved it so much that they now get together once a month and they eat pizza together. But lots of micro communities. I'm not sure that community of practice is anything other than pizza and red wine, but it's kind of nice to see it there. And some are slightly more formal in that it's a sort of lunch and learn type sessions. But yeah, those are all great things. Okay, so that was me. I will say that I'm open to questions. If you've got any other questions that you want to put in here, I'm hoping that's given you a sort of insight. You can see that I've taken it all from the Agile Change Agent qualification that APMG do. I know an awful lot of you on this call have already taken that because it is such a popular and a big seller. And some others of you are actually booked on it, because I know, because you told me you were coming to the webinar tonight. So if you're falling in love with this kind of Agile approach, which I hope you are, learn more, because it pays dividends. It's all about achieving as early and achieving frequently throughout the life of the change. So that's what we're trying to do, and I'm hoping that I've given you some sort of insight into how you might go about sort of plotting this transformation. So going all the way through from, you know, looking at this for a minute, thinking about the desired culture, then thinking about the standards, policies and metrics, and then thinking about some of the more infrastructure and technology driven stuff, as well as starting the new behaviours. So hopefully I've given you an oversight. Any questions, Mark, that anybody wants me to answer?
I can't. No, other than the sort of feedback on the previous two sessions, it's yeah, I can't see any questions. So, and it's
that's a good thing, and we're coming up to the end of the hour, so hopefully everybody's really happy. If you need to get hold of me, I'm just going to go back to the end here. If you need to get hold of me, you can find me Melanie at agilechangemanagement.co.uk or in LinkedIn, or you can pass your comments to Mark. I'll happily follow up with any and all of you. I love this subject. I love both the Agile and I like the intellectual challenge of trying to devise the new ways of working that we're all experiencing. So I've got loads of bits of research, but you'll find that I publish a lot on LinkedIn as well. So hopefully I'm meeting your needs.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mel. Great session as ever. And yeah, that just leaves me to thank you all very much for attending. Hope you found it informative. We'll got the links on screen there, so if you need to check out any further information, that's there, but we'll also include the details in the follow-up email as well. And that's the other reminder for me, is just to remind you that we have recorded the webinar today, so look out for the follow-up email tomorrow morning, some point UK time, and that will point you to the recording and slides. So yeah, I think that's it. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Mel, and we'll see you again on hopefully on future webinars.
Yeah, there's another one next month, which is all about Agile as well. So if you want to follow up on this conversation, just join me next month. I'm off to a meeting in Florida now, so have fun, guys.
And that's something else that will be in the follow-up email. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye-bye.